this meeting to order. For all those that care to, please stand for a prayer and pledge of allegiance. Let us pray. Lord, we pray for our nation and its cities that they may be beacons of hope and light in a world filled with darkness and despair. Help us to be a shining city on a hill, a place where your love and grace abound. May our streets be filled with peace, our homes with joy, and our hearts with love for one another. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you, everyone. Welcome to Republic. Thank you for being here this evening. At this time, we'll go ahead and move on to citizen participation. Do we have any citizens this evening for citizens participation? Seeing no one came forward. Moving on to our consent agenda. I welcome the council to ask any questions or comments about items number 1 through 3 on the agenda. Do we have any questions or comments? Seeing there are none, I now need a motion and a second for the approval of the consent agenda.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Boards, commission, and committee schedule. Our next planning and zoning meeting will be on July the 8th, 2024. Board of Adjustment meeting will be on July the 11th, 2024. We have a City Council workshop July 9th, 2024 at 11 o'clock at the Builds Building. City Council workshop July the 16th, 2024 at 5 p.m. That'll be before our next City Council meeting. And then our next City Council meeting on July 16th, 2024. We also have a Board of Adjustment meeting on August the 1st, 2024. Moving on to new business and emergency ordinances. I now need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-39 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council authorizing the issuance of a not to exceed $50 million principal amount special obligation bond, State of Missouri Direct Loan Program, Series 2024, prescribing the form and details of the bond and authorizing certain other actions and documents in connection therewith.
We have Mr. Ford here this evening to give us an overview.
Good evening, Bob Ford, Finance Director. We've talked about the SRF debt a number of times in prior City Council meetings, but I want to just sort of update you on a number of things tonight and give you an understanding of why we're bringing this to Council tonight as an emergency ordinance. And really, the primary driver here is that we need to issue a full notice to proceed letter to Burns and Mack no later than July 1. And you'll recall from the council meeting on the 21st that this council passed a resolution 24-R-27 authorizing the city administrator to issue a full notice to proceed letter to Burns and Mack in the amount not to exceed about $95 million. So Burns and Mack needs to be in receipt of that full notice to proceed letter no later than July 1, or the wastewater treatment plant project could cost us more money. That's a bad thing for us. So as we back up from that date, we have identified that obviously we can't issue the full notice to proceed letter until the city has secured all of its funding. So in order to tell Burns and Mack, go forward, do great things, we need to let them know we have all the money to fund this project. So the SRF debt is the third and final tranche of funding that will enable the city to complete the wastewater treatment plant. Remember, we borrowed money in the Series 22 bond offering. Then we received two. That was about $45.5 million. Then we also received two grants from DNR, one through the ARPA, one through the General Revenue Fund, $25 million each. This $50 million closes out our financial requirement in order to fund the project. So therefore, the city must close on the SRF debt before we can issue the letter to Burns and Mack. In order for us to close on the debt, the council must approve the ordinance. And the ordinance, there's a lot of legal language. And also in attendance tonight is Mark Grimm from Gilmore and Bell, who's our bond counsel that can answer any legal questions. But suffice it to say, there's a lot of legalese to basically create this SRF debt. So the actions that we're here to take, one, on June 18th, we're looking for City Council to approve the ordinance. Two, we'll close on the SRF debt on the 25th, which is next week. We've already got a closing date. On the 26th of June, we'll issue the full notice to proceed letter to Burns and Mack, and then we're off to the races. So just to remind you on the SRF that the most attractive thing about this is that the interest rate on this debt is 30% of what the current market rate is. So I checked the other day, current market rates to do a debt offering that was similar to what we did in 22 would be between 4.5% and 4.75%. The rate on this debt is 1.28%. At least as of last week, they will actually set that rate at the closing date, but suffice it to say, it's going to be around 1.25, 1.28, 1.3. Plus, there's an administrative fee of 50 basis points on top of that. So we're getting this money for less than 2%. So right there, we could probably stop and take a vote. But the loan is made through the state's purchase of the city's bonds. So earlier, Eric and I were talking about the structure, and instead of a DNR being a bank in this environment and just loaning us the money and taking a promissory note back, and the promissory note sits on their balance sheet, we actually issue a bond. They buy our bond, the bond sits on their balance sheet, and then in turn, they make the loan to the city. So just to remind you, we've used the special obligation bonds before when we did the Series 22 bond offering and also the 23 bond offering, which funded the Parks and Rec debt. The thing about special obligation bonds, they don't require voter approval. But they're subject to the annual appropriation of the city. So it's more of a moral obligation of the city on an annual basis to make the appropriation to pay the debt service on the bonds. Recall that from our city council meeting a couple of meetings ago, we've already passed the utility rate increases that will in fact fund the debt service on this debt. So that's already in place. Matter of fact, DNR would not have approved the bond or the debt had we not already done that. So we've given them a pathway to how we're going to fund the debt service on the SRF debt. In addition to the debt service requirements, this ordinance also requires the city to set aside on a monthly basis about $72,000, which is really, they call it depreciation replacement funding. It basically is a sinking fund that we'll put money into every month. That money will build up over time, and then as we need to do repairs on the new wastewater plant, we've got the money to do it. So they're forcing us to basically create a savings account to keep the facility that they're funding with $50 million operational, and this money can be used for ongoing maintenance and operations. So once again, bond payments, just like our other bond environment, they're due on twice a year, January 1 and July 1. The last payment is a 26-year amortization. The last payment will be due in 2053. The city can redeem the bonds early before the maturity date at our discretion after the 10th anniversary of the closing. Or if DNR gives us permission, we could we could pay off the bonds tomorrow, so long as they gave us their okay to do so. So, this is the final tranche of the money that we need to finish the wastewater plant. The rate is under 2%. Staff is recommending approval. So any questions for me or for Mark? We're happy to take any questions at this point. I know we've talked about this debt before, but this is the first time you've seen a lot of documentation related to the bond offering.
Any questions from council? Certainly a lot of information.
It is.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Do we have any citizens' comments? No citizens' comments for this evening. One last chance with council. Any questions from council?
Mr. Mayor, I know we talked about it earlier, but we do have the ability, we have projections on the increased service costs or the sewer and the water, but those aren't set in stone. As long as we meet that debt service expectation, we'd have the ability to adjust those down if revenue allowed.
Correct.
Thanks.
Seeing there are no additional questions, this bill has been classified as an emergency ordinance pursuant to 3.10G of the Charter in order to secure pricing by closing within the required time frame. As this is an emergency ordinance, it will require 2/3 vote from the council for passage. I need a motion and a second for the passage of Bill 24-39, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. We're now going to take a roll call vote on our computers. Motion carries 8-0. New business. Item number 5. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-40 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor? Aye. All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving the final plat of the Hills of Old Savannah, First Edition.
And we have Mr. Tabor here for an overview.
Good evening. Chris Tabor, Principal Planner for the Builds Department. The City of Republic Builds Department received an application from Old Savannah LLC requesting a final plat of the Hills of Old Savannah First Edition. The associated preliminary plat was approved by City Council as Old Savannah Phase 4 on June 21st, 2022. The final plat of the Hills of Old Savannah First Edition legally divides approximately 3.39 acres of land into 15 lots zoned high-density single-family residential, R1H. The final plat will also convey the dedication of associated right-of-way, utility, and stormwater easements to the city, and includes approximately 763 linear feet of new street and 920 linear feet of new sidewalk. Staff has reviewed the final plat and has determined that it substantially conforms to the requirements of the approved preliminary plat, in addition to the requirements of the City Code Chapter 410 Subdivision Regulations and Article 5 Major Subdivision Final Plat. Staff is recommending approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tabor. Do we have any questions from council?
Mr. Mayor. So on that, is it just preliminary drawings where the roads below there will continue through? I understand that one's a roundabout and it stops there, but I think is that Charlton below there, will that actually happen, or is that just
So what you see on there is partially the Hills of Old Savannah to the east, which already exists. This is the first edition so a continuation of that. To the south will be Old Savannah Second Edition, which is also part of this preliminary plat. So that'll come in as soon as that infrastructure has been approved and finished.
we would anticipate that road would keep going across? I know this one's a dead end, but the one below there would it come all the way up the road there?
It does. It comes out to Farm Road 89.
All right. Thank you.
Do we have any additional questions from council? Do we have any citizens' comments this evening? We have no citizens' comments. And pursuant to 3.10F of the Charter, staff is requesting the second reading of this ordinance during tonight's meeting. I need a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 24-40 to be held during tonight's meeting.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Item number 6, I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-41 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving the final plat of Oakwood Heights Second Edition.
And we have Mr. Tabor here.
The City of Republic Buildings Department received an application for a final plat from Little Apple Investment Property LLC for the final plat of Oakwood Heights, Second Edition. The associated preliminary plat was approved by City Council as Oakwood Heights, Second Edition on April 11th, 2023. The final plat of Oakwood Heights, Second Edition legally divides approximately 2.97 acres of land into 3 lots zoned multifamily residential R3. The final plat will also convey the dedication of associated right-of-way, utility, and stormwater easements to the city. The final plat includes approximately 208 linear feet of new street and 1,092 linear feet of new sidewalk. City staff has reviewed the final plat of Oakwood Heights Second Edition and determined that it substantially conforms to the requirements of the approved preliminary plat, in addition to the requirements of City Code Chapter 410 subdivision regulations and Article 5 major subdivision final plat. Staff is recommending approval of this final plat.
Thank you, Mr. Tabor. Do we have any questions from council? Mr.
I drive by this all the time, but the little roundabout, is that just for parking, or what's the, I guess I was kind of curious what the purpose of that was.
So this piece of property actually includes, it fronts Turner Street over there to the east, and so Lot 1 is currently being constructed on. What you've got here, what will effectively happen is that cul-de-sac's been built, and that cul-de-sac is what will serve these incoming on lots 3 and 2. Those, if you've been out to those, they're like a driveway model.
Yeah.
They've got their townhomes, and so they've got driveways. There'll be a like a red striping there to ensure that there is, to encourage anyways, people to not park there. It's not intended as a parking area.
Thanks.
Any additional questions from council? Seeing there are none, do we have any citizens' comments this evening? No citizens' comments this evening. Pursuant to 3.10F of the Charter, staff is requesting the second reading of this ordinance during tonight's meeting. I need a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 24-41 to be held during tonight's meeting, please.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Item number 7. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-42 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
All of those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving final plat of Oak Hills Residential Subdivision Phase 3.
And we have Mr. Tabor here this evening for an overview.
The City of Republic Buildings Department received an application from Wolf Building and Development, Inc. for the final plat of Oak Hills Phase 3. The associated preliminary plat was approved by City Council as Oak Hills on January 19th, 2021. The final plat of Oak Hills Phase 3 will legally divide approximately 5.19 acres of land into 19 lots, zoned high-density, single-family residential, R1H. The final plat will also convey the dedication of associated right-of-way, stormwater easements, and utilities easements to the city. The final plat also includes approximately 807 linear feet of new street and 807 linear feet of new sidewalk. City staff has reviewed the final plat for Oak Hills Phase 3 and has determined it substantially conforms to the requirements of the approved preliminary plat, in addition to the requirements of the City Code, Chapter 410 subdivision regulations, and Article 5 major subdivision final plat. Staff is recommending approval of this final plat.
Thank you, Mr. Tabor. Do we have any questions from council? Seeing there are none, do we have any citizen comments? Seeing there are none, pursuant to 3.10F of the Charter, staff is requesting the second reading of this ordinance during tonight's meeting. I need a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 24-42 to be held during tonight's meeting, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Item number 8, I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-43 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
I'm sorry, are you on the new business second reads?
Item number 8.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to check on the numbering.
That's the right one? I think this part is messed up, but the numbers have been right. Oh, so I need to go.
Oh, no.
This one's right. So that's just new. So that's the new business. That one's been taken off, isn't it? Okay. Just 2440. Okay. 2440. Okay, this is the second read for 2440. So I need a motion and a second for the second? The second reading of Bill 24-40 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving the final plat of the Hills of Old Savannah First Edition.
Do we have any questions from council? Seeing there are none, do we have any citizens' comments? Seeing there are none. And then do I still read? Okay. I'll just read this so I don't get lost. Pursuant to 3.10F of the Charter, staff is requesting the second reading of this ordinance during tonight's meeting. I need a motion and a second to approve the second reading. So I just now need a motion and a second for final passage of Bill 24-40, please.
Motion.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. And everyone will vote on our computers. Motion carries 8-0-0. Okay, so that's good. Okay. So item number 10, I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 24-41 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving the final plat of Oakwood Heights Second Edition.
Thank you, Laura. Does council have any additional questions before or discussion before we move on to final passage? Seeing there is none, I need a motion and a second for final passage of Bill 24-41, please.
Motion. Second.
We're now going to take a roll call vote on our computer. Motion carries 8-0-0. This is the last one. This is, okay. Item number 11, I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 24-42 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving the final plat of Oak Hills Residential Subdivision, Phase 3.
Thank you, Laura. Any questions or discussion from council before moving on to final passage? Seeing there is none, I now need a motion and a second for the final passage of Bill 24-42, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. We're now going to take a roll call vote on our computer. Motion carries 8-0-0.
The very first one. Okay, so we're done with it. So then we're on to staff. Reports from staff, none of this. Just up here. I think it's off the agenda. That's not on there. Okay. Okay.
Apologies, we've had an amended agenda, so the confusion is mine. So, moving on to reports from staff. Ms. Addington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just love progress. That means we're
Busy.
progressing. right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
But happy to be here tonight, wishing David a very well-deserved rest. Want to draw attention to a couple of things in the admin report. One particular is regarding, good timing, Bob, and by the way, great job. Bob has worked so hard on all of this information, and I know you worked really hard on that ordinance, so great job. But on the phosphorus level determination, we received the determination last week, I believe it was, from our attorney out of Kansas City. MDNR has officially adopted the phosphorus target reduction limit of 1 part per million for all sources with a design flow greater than 1 million gallons per day. So that does pertain to us. This limit was also adopted by the Environmental Protection Agency. Compliance will be required in 2033. So David wanted me to bring that tonight for consideration that this is a big change. We already took that into account with the new wastewater plant, and as you can imagine, it's not going to get any cheaper. So it just proves we are on target. So thank you for the support on all of that. Have a couple of parks updates regarding the tennis courts. The tennis courts and pickleball nets are going to be installed by Thursday, June 20th. Open to the public July 1. Additionally, Miller Park restrooms will be completed and open to the public July 1 as well. We have named Chris Parks as our new Parks and Recreation Director. He is starting June 28th, so he will be at Have a Blast. So that was the last announcement for Parks. Have a Blast, June 28th. Hopefully we will see you all there. And I just want to say about Chris Parks, if that name sounds familiar to you, he did work for the city for 16 years, went to the city of Branson and is coming back. So be sure to welcome him on June 28th. I also talked to David before he left, and we are going to, this was in the admin report, just want to draw it out an open floor here, that we are going to give as a thank you to staff, letting staff realize how much they're appreciated. We're going to utilize section 407 of the employee handbook, and we will be giving administrative leave on July 5th. So we have the 4th of July holiday and then administrative leave on July 5th. Public safety will be given 8 hours of additional vacation. And then, of course, if there's any emergencies that people have to work, we'll treat that as a holiday. And with that, I just want to wish everyone a happy and safe 4th of July.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Addington. Do we have any reports from council? No reports from council. On to reports from the mayor. Definitely have a blast. Appreciate all the information tonight. That was a lot of information between the workshops and a lot of, it's a bright future, so it is exciting. It's a lot of exciting things going on in our future and a lot of exciting things that we get to talk about. So very thankful for that. Looking forward to have a blast. To our council, we have the a council liaison position to our Planning and Zoning Commission. It's a non-voting position. I know currently Mr. Wilson holds it. It's a 1-year appointment. And so after this, anyone on council that is interested in filling that position as a liaison to our Planning and Zoning, please get with me if you are interested. Before our next meeting, preferably. We also have open seats on Planning and Zoning Commission and the Republic Housing Authority. And so we need citizens to fill these positions. Any citizens that have an interest in being involved in our local government, this is all up to you guys. So we really need citizens to step up and help us on filling some of these committees. If you know anyone, please mention it, and hopefully we can get those positions filled. Other than that, I didn't have anything this evening other than executive session. No further action other than the announcing adjournment by the mayor shall take place after an executive session that is scheduled for the last matter on the agenda unless otherwise stated on the agenda or is allowed per RSMO 610.02. Tonight we will be going into closed session under RSMO 610.021.2 real estate acquisition, closed session, closed vote, closed record, and RSMO 610.021.13 individually identifiable personal records, performance rating, or records pertaining to employees or applicants for employment. Closed session, closed vote, closed record. I now need a motion and a second to go into closed session.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. We'll now have a roll call vote.
Councilmember Shaw,
Aye.
Councilmember Fields,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Harder,
Aye.
Councilmember Updike,
Aye.
Councilmember Gerke,
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell,
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Motion carries.